Writing villains isn't easy. Every villain needs a reason for their actions. They could be good people who turn to evil because they believe it's for the greater good. Or maybe their motive is rooted in a deep and well-thought-out philosophy. Or they could simply be a heartless monster who enjoys watching people suffer. In this video, we'll go through 100 unique motivations you can use to write any kind of villain. By the end, you'll be able to give your villain a motive that feels real and compelling. Let's dive in. Section 1. Psychological and trauma-based motives. These villains use their pain, loneliness, or rage to lash out at a world that hurt them badly. Pain twists into cruelty, fear morphs into hate, and before long, they're not just victims of their circumstances anymore. And some just want everything to burn because they'd rather feel nothing than deal with the weight of it all. 1. Persecution. A lifetime of being pushed aside because of their race, disability, or beliefs turns the villain into a weapon. Driven by a need to make the world pay for the pain they endured, and using their trauma as a reason to hurt others, they become what they hate. 2. Grief and loss. Mourning turns to hopelessness. The villain sees no reason to live in a world that took away their loved ones. They lash out, causing pain to others, trying to make everyone feel as empty as they do. When grief isn't healed, it spreads like a sickness, infecting everything around them. 3. Mental instability. Broken by trauma or insanity, the villain acts on things only they can see. They hear voices telling them to destroy. They see threats in innocent gestures, and they fight battles against hallucinations. Their reality is twisted, trapped in a world that makes no sense to anyone else. 4. Isolation. The villain sees human connection as a weakness. They cut ties, reject help, and attack anyone who gets too close, all to protect their fragile solitude. Loneliness eats at them, and connection feels too risky, so they prefer the safety of their own company, even if it's filled with pain. 5. Imposter Syndrome. The villain lives in constant fear of being exposed as a fraud. To mask their insecurity, they turn to brutal tactics. They eliminate anyone who doubts them. They rewrite laws to justify their power and create fake emergencies to prove they're worthy of control. Their rule is built on a shaky foundation, crushing them under the weight of being found out. 6. Childhood corruption. The villain was abused, ridiculed, or neglected as a child, and they internalized the cruelty they faced. They came to believe the hurtful labels others placed on them. Determined to make the world as cruel as their upbringing, they embrace their inner darkness. Their scars become weapons, and their pain gives them a twisted sense of permission to hurt others. 7. Displaced Rage. Unable to confront their true oppressor, which could be a god, a parent, or a king. The villain focuses their rage on easier targets. They attack fellow citizens, burn down villages, and sacrifice innocent people to satisfy a hate that will never die. 8. Reclaiming identity. After being stripped of their name, title, and dignity, the villain begins a battle against being erased. They demand the world acknowledge their existence. Their journey for validation becomes a destructive force, wiping out anything in its path. They desperately want to define themselves on their terms, no matter the cost. 9. Guilt. The villain can't escape the weight of their past atrocities. They seek punishment by provoking heroes to end their lives. Even when forgiveness is offered, they push it away. The villain continues to escalate their actions until the world hates them as much as they hate themselves. They believe redeeming themselves is impossible and will do whatever it takes to ensure their suffering never ends. 10. The desire for silence. The villain believes free speech is the ultimate threat. Silence is the only way they can maintain control. They silence anyone who speaks out. They cut tongues, punish rebels, and lock up anyone who resists. Section 2. Power and ambition-based motives. These villains equate power with self-worth, fueled either by ego, insecurity, or a warped sense of destiny. They build empires to fill inner voids, enforce loyalty to silence self-doubt, and erase rivals to prove their superiority. 11. To distinguish oneself. The villain fights for recognition in a world that dismissed them as ordinary. Desperate for the attention of others, they create huge, terrifying events or amazing innovations, even if those same people run away in fear. Respect and fear become the same thing to them, but no matter how much they achieve, it never fills the empty space inside. 12. power to achieve a goal. Convinced the world can't be saved without total control, the villain takes control and builds armies to make their vision come true. Anyone who disagrees with them is a threat. They believe they need absolute power to fix everything, but in the end, they only destroy what they were trying to save. 13. Ambition. The villain craves power and crushes anyone who stands in their way. They see themselves as an unstoppable force of nature. They dismiss the harm they cause as part of their plan. Each victory only makes them hungrier for more, but no matter how much they gain, they never truly feel satisfied. 14. Rule part of the world. The villain fixates on a specific place, a mountain range, an ocean trench, or even a dream world. They see this place as their rightful domain. They kick out anyone who tries to enter, and wage wars to protect borders that only they care about. 15. Rule the entire world. The villain believes conquering the entire world is their divine mission. They erase cultures and rebuild civilization in their image. Their dream of world domination is a shrine to their ego, but it can never satisfy their pride. 16. Megalomania. The villain believes they are a god and demands worship. They write holy texts to glorify themselves and punish those who don't believe in them. Their delusion of godhood isolates them, turning them into a tyrant who kneels only to their own reflection. No one else can truly stand beside them, for they see no one else as equal. 17. Legacy. The villain is obsessed with how they'll be remembered after they're gone. They build giant monuments, rewrite history, and choose heirs to keep their name alive forever. They'll do anything, no matter how ruthless, just to be remembered, even if it means drowning the world in blood. 18. Fame. The villain craves fame and will stop at nothing to get it. They orchestrate dramatic events to grab attention, no matter the cost. Whether it's a public duel with a hero, a taunting speech to a king, or the destruction of entire cities, their goal is to be remembered. For them, being feared and hated is better than being forgotten. 19. Genetic legacy. The villain treats their children like a genetic experiment. They breed children with specific traits, disowning any child they deem flawed. Their bloodline is a prison, where heirs are held by impossible expectations. 20. Inferiority Complex. The villain's insecurity grows into a need to overcompensate. They conquer to prove they're worthy and force others to obey them. But their victories feel empty. Nothing can drown out the inner voice of self-doubt. No matter how much they achieve, they always feel inferior. Section 3. Moral extremes or virtue gone wrong. These villains believe the end always justifies the means. They enforce rigid rules and view their atrocities as necessary for the greater good. Their actions often cross the line into cruelty, and their vision of the greater good comes at a high cost. Their stories force us to confront the dark side of our beliefs and the fine line between good and evil. 21. Justice. The villain takes on the role of judge, jury, and executioner. They hand out punishments that far exceed the crimes committed. Lives are destroyed over minor offenses, and in the end, their desire for justice only becomes more brutal oppression. 22. Self-sacrifice. The villain is willing to sacrifice anything, including their soul. They commit atrocities like massacring villages and poisoning wells, believing that these actions are necessary to stop a greater evil. Their self-sacrifice is a twisted form of heroism, tainting the future they hope to protect. 23. Honor. This villain has a strict code of conduct. They brutally punish any violation. Tradition is more important than compassion, and reputation is valued above life itself, even if it means hurting others, all to protect their honor and uphold their twisted ideals. 24. Moral superiority. The villain sees themselves as the only one capable of making the right decisions. Anyone who disagrees is automatically wrong and potentially dangerous. Their arrogance blinds them to the suffering they cause as they enforce their will without regard for the consequences. 25. Altruism gone wrong. The villain believes they can eliminate suffering and create a perfect world, but their vision of utopia is built on oppression, sterilization, outlawing dissent, and the elimination of personal choice create a hellish society where citizens become slaves. Their ideals leave people trapped in a world devoid of freedom or hope. 26. Sacred oath. For these villains, a sacred oath is a license to kill. They use their vows to justify extreme actions. The oath itself is a tool, a means to commit unspeakable acts under the guise of righteousness. 27. Selective empathy. This villain reserves love for a chosen few. They shower affection on family, lovers, and pets, while everyone else is dehumanized and dismissed. Their cruelty toward outsiders is framed as loyalty to their inner circle, but their love is a trap where the ones they claim to care for are suffocated by their indifference. The more they claim to love, the more they justify harming others, creating a world where their twisted version of loyalty is the norm. 28. Mathematical order. The villain reduces human life to data points in a larger equation. Culling populations and euthanizing the elderly are seen as logical solutions to maintain balance. Their vision of order is built on the cold calculation that some lives are disposable and their actions are devoid of compassion. In their world, the line between survival and genocide is blurred, and their lack of empathy leaves a trail of suffering in its wake. 29. Saving humanity. Convinced that humanity is doomed to self-destruct, the villain resorts to extreme solutions. They believe their methods are the only way. They think they know best, even though their methods end up killing the very people they claim to save. Their dark attempts to protect humanity only create more suffering, turning the world into a nightmare. 30. Tradition. This villain clings to ancient customs. To them, any form of progress is a threat, and change is not tolerated, and they'll do whatever it takes to keep things exactly as they've always been. Their obsession with preserving the old ways leads to a stagnation that chokes the life out of their society. Section 4. Emotionally extreme motives. Love becomes obsession and hate becomes genocide. These villains are consumed by strong emotions that overcome reason. These villains are driven by intense feelings that control their actions, often at the expense of rational thought. Whether it's an all-consuming love or a relentless hatred, their emotions become a force that spirals out of control, leaving chaos in their wake. 31. Romance. The villain believes the mere desire for love justifies any atrocity. They see their target not as a person, but as a prize to be claimed. They orchestrate elaborate schemes to isolate or control their beloved, willing to do whatever it takes to possess them. What starts as passion turns into violent obsession. 32. Obsessive love. This villain equates love with control and demands complete submission. They remove freedom in the name of protection, and, in their twisted mind, controlling every aspect of their beloved's life is the ultimate expression of love, even if it hurts the one they claim to care for. 33. Hate. This villain is fueled by deep hatred. They wipe out individuals, groups, or entire cultures. Their hatred is a relentless pursuit that dictates every thought and action. They see no middle ground, only total annihilation. In their mind, hate is not just a feeling, it's a mission. 34. Unnatural affection. The villain desires a forbidden relationship. In their twisted world, the more they dominate, the more they believe they care. But what they call love is anything but. It's a sick obsession that relies on manipulation and the lack of autonomy, leaving only emptiness and despair in its wake. 35. Envy. The villain is deeply resentful of their rival's wealth, beauty, or talent. They sabotage, steal, and spread lies. Their focus on what others have turns into a poison that consumes them. No matter how much they take or destroy, it's never enough to fill the hole inside them. 36. Obsession. This villain fixates on a person, artifact, or goal. They abandon allies, morality, and reason, going deeper into their obsession until nothing else matters. They sacrifice anything and anyone to get closer to what they want. Their obsession blinds them to consequences, turning their pursuit into a dangerous and all-consuming force. 37. Emotional betrayal. This villain is driven by deep feelings of betrayal, broken trust, shattered relationships, or a profound disappointment. The betrayal they've experienced becomes the lens through which they view the world, making them extremely dangerous. 38. Companionship. The villain craves connection so deeply that they force it through magic, manipulation, or even mutilation. The need for companionship rips apart all boundaries. Their desperation becomes destructive. In the end, their loneliness only grows. 39. Punishment. For this villain, punishment is about making those who wronged them suffer in the most personal, degrading ways possible. Every act of cruelty is deliberate, designed to make their victims feel as small as they once felt. But their thirst for punishment only reveals how deep their own pain is. 40. Rivalry. The villain becomes obsessed with surpassing a rival. basing their entire self-worth on that one fractured relationship. Every victory feels empty, and every loss feels like the end of the world. But no matter how hard they try to win, the competition only drags them down, leaving them bitter and unfulfilled. Section 5. Existential and philosophical motives. These villains wrestle with life's biggest questions. They challenge not just their opponents, but the very idea of our existence, pushing the hero to confront the futility they see in life. For them, the battle isn't just physical, it's a war of ideas. 41. Nihilism. To the villain, life has no meaning. Human existence is seen as a joke with no punchline. They unravel alliances, desecrate temples, and mock hope as nothing more than a foolish delusion. 42. Existential dread. The villain is haunted by the fear of being forgotten, terrified their life will leave no lasting mark. Every action is driven by a desperate need to prove they mattered, even if it means destroying the world to do so. Their feeling of being erased controls them, leaving only chaos in its wake. 43. Cosmic indifference. The villain sees the universe as uncaring or indifferent to humanity. They take extreme actions, showing the world that nothing truly matters. They laugh as heroes desperately cling to hope, mocking their efforts to find meaning in chaos. In their eyes, destruction isn't cruel. It's just proof of the cold, indifferent universe they believe in. 44. Immortality. The villain is consumed by the fear of death. They commit atrocities in their attempts to achieve immortality. For them, death is unimaginable. Living forever is the only way for them to avoid the inevitable. 45. Forbidden knowledge. The villain craves secrets never meant for human minds. The more they uncover, the less human they become, consumed by the very knowledge they sought. What started as a hunger for understanding turns into a destructive obsession. 46. Nostalgia. The villain clings to memories of a better time, convinced the world has strayed from its true path. They are nostalgic, yearning for a time they believe was better, but they are not necessarily consumed by rage. Their actions are more about preservation than destruction. 47. Destructive nostalgia. The villain mourns a lost era. Destructive nostalgia is about destroying the present to recreate a past that never truly existed. They actively destroy modern infrastructure, eliminate innovators, and brainwash younger generations to adhere to outdated traditions. 48. Escape destiny. A prophecy confines the villain to a predetermined fate. Every step they take to defy destiny leads them closer to fulfilling it. Their fight against the prophecy becomes the very force that weaves the threads of the future they fear most. In running from their fate, they unknowingly run toward it, proving that some fates are not so easily escaped. 49. Achieve destiny. The villain clings to their destiny, using it to justify every cruel and destructive act they commit. To them, their path is unchangeable, unavoidable, and worth any price. What they see as fate is often just an excuse for their ambition, leaving chaos and suffering behind as they march toward what they believe is inevitable. 50. Time manipulation. The villain twists the flow of time to fix mistakes, eliminate rivals before they're born, or trap enemies in endless loops. They cling to time, trying to control every second. But no matter how hard they try, time refuses to be tamed. It slips through their fingers like a river that can't be stopped. Section 6. Societal and cultural motives. These villains embody systemic evils like xenophobia or authoritarianism. They use ideology to control people, silence dissent, and justify atrocities like genocide. Their stories reflect real-world issues like fascism, climate denial, and propaganda, showing how fear and blind belief can tear societies apart from within. 51. Social cohesion. The villain believes conformity is everything, and any deviation is seen as a threat to the collective. They believe that by eliminating non-conforming people, they strengthen the community. But in reality, they create a toxic environment where freedom and individuality are crushed. 52. Dishonor. Exiled or shamed by their community, the villain rejects everything they once believed in. The dishonor they've suffered fuels a desire to tear down what they once valued. But in their quest for vengeance, they lose sight of meaning, leaving only chaos and emptiness. 53. Spread hate and fear. Every lie they spread, every fear they amplify, serves to divide and destroy. They thrive on the chaos they create, feeding off the hatred and distrust they sow. In their twisted view, the breakdown of unity and compassion is not just a tool, it's their ultimate goal. Society's unraveling is their greatest victory, and they delight in the anarchy they've unleashed. 54. Religious extremes. The villain uses religious texts to justify their actions. Every act of cruelty is seen as a divine duty. They silence anyone who questions their interpretation of God's word. In their eyes, unwavering faith is the only path in life, even if it means destroying those who stand in their way. 55. Cultural supremacy. Convinced that their traditions, race, or religion are superior, the villain attempts to erase what they deem inferior cultures. They rewrite history, burn libraries, and enslave enemies to create a monocultural utopia. But underneath their aggressive efforts is a fear of difference. Their cultural supremacy is merely an act that crumbles under the weight of their insecurities. 56. Environmental extremism. The villain embodies nature's wrath, punishing humanity for deforestation, pollution, and exploitation. They summon storms, awaken ancient beasts, and sink cities to restore ecological balance. Their justice is indiscriminate, drowning the innocent along with the guilty. They see themselves as nature's avengers, willing to sacrifice everything to cleanse the world of its sins. 57. Cultural exploitation. The villain exploits the cultural heritage of others for personal gain, stealing traditions, artifacts, or rituals to elevate their status. They claim these treasures as their own, erasing their true origins and using them to legitimize their power. They strip sacred symbols of their meaning, turning them into tools for propaganda or profit. In doing so, they rob entire communities of their identity while building a hollow empire built on stolen legacies. 58. Language control. The villain bans words, burns books, and silences poets. For them, controlling language means controlling minds. They believe that by limiting what people say, they can limit what people think. But their efforts to enforce control only create a revolution. Forbidden words now become symbols of resistance. 59. Cultural assimilation. The villain forces their culture onto others, erasing traditions, languages, and identities to create a unified society. They see diversity as a weakness and believe conformity will bring strength. But beneath their vision lies a brutal suppression of individuality. The more they enforce sameness, the more they crush the spirit of those they claim to uplift. 60. Collective punishment. The villain condemns entire communities for the crimes of a single member. Collective punishment is a way to instill fear and control. They believe that by making everyone pay, they can prevent future transgressions. But their actions only breed more resentment and suffering, and the cycle of revenge deepens. And the more they punish, the more they lose their own humanity. Section 7. Desperation and survival-based motives. These villains aren't born evil. They're pushed to the edge by desperate circumstances. The line between right and wrong blurs when survival is at stake. They make choices that seem unthinkable in calmer times, driven by the primal urge to keep themselves or their loved ones alive. Their journey forces us to confront the limits of our morality and the lengths we might go to in the face of extreme need. 61. Fear. Fear drives the actions taken by this villain. They see enemies in every shadow and resort to drastic measures to eliminate threats. But their efforts only create instability, turning their world into a nightmare. Attempts to control the unknown only fuel the chaos they're trying to prevent. 62. Desperation. Trapped by dire circumstances, the villain makes choices that once seemed unforgivable. Driven into a corner by the desperate need to survive, each compromise chips away at their humanity, and the more they do, the further they fall. In the end, they are left with a life built on the very actions they once swore to avoid. 63. Survival through sacrifice. The villain believes that their survival depends on the suffering of others. They sacrifice loved ones, allies, or entire communities to ensure their own continued existence. For them, every life saved is one more they must abandon. 64. Survival through betrayal. The villain abandons allies, sacrifices loved ones, and turns on former friends to ensure their own survival. They justify betrayal as necessary, believing that every life taken brings them one step closer to safety. For them, trust is a liability in a world where only the strongest survive. 65. Addiction. The villain craves a substance, sensation, or power that erodes their humanity. The object of their addiction becomes their sole focus, overriding every other concern. They'll do whatever it takes to feed their need, even if it means destroying their own values and the lives of others. Each dose brings temporary relief, but the cycle of addiction only tightens its grip, pulling them deeper into darkness. In the end, their humanity is gone, leaving behind a shell of who they once were. 66. FOMO, or the fear of missing out. The villain is driven by a relentless fear of missing out. They scramble to seize power, relics, or experiences before their rivals can. They trigger wars over rumors, loot tombs for trinkets, and betray allies for minor advantages. The constant sense of urgency and paranoia lead to rash decisions, resulting in more chaos than they can control. Being left behind to them is unbearable. They'll stop at nothing to get what they want, no matter the cost. 67. Recover what's lost. The villain becomes obsessed with reclaiming a stolen heirloom, land, or lover. They believe the lost item is a symbol of their identity and worth. They're even willing to destroy the world to attain it. And by the time they finally achieve their goal, they are left with an empty victory, a mere shell of the thing they once treasured. 68. Protect a loved one. The safety of their loved one is the ultimate priority, and the villain will do whatever it takes to maintain it. They create a world where their loved one is insulated from danger, but this world is a cage, built on lies and violence. Their actions, meant to protect, isolate, and confine the very person they are trying to keep safe. The more they try to shield their loved one, the more they entrap them in a web of darkness. 69. Parasitic leadership. Power and prosperity come at any cost. Even the well-being of their people is a resource to be exploited. They justify their actions as necessary for the greater good. The more they take, the more they need, and the more their subjects suffer. Their leadership is a parasitic drain, leaving a trail of devastation and a kingdom on the brink of collapse. 70. Resource hoarding. This villain stockpiles their nation's wealth, food, and resources, using scarcity to control populations. They believe power lies in control, and control comes from withholding what others need. They watch peasants starve from their marble towers, seeing their greed as necessary. Their desire for absolute control leaves them isolated and hollow. Section 8. Chaos and destruction-based motives. These villains reject order, finding purpose in anarchy. To them, the absence of structure is liberating. They burn kingdoms for fun, engineer chaos to feel alive, or liberate others by erasing laws. Their actions are often random and senseless, making them difficult to predict or stop. These villains are terrorists, nihilists, or hedonists who force heroes to defend meaning itself. 71. Destruction. The villain finds enjoyment in annihilation. The act of destroying is a profound and satisfying experience. They see the world as something to be torn down, not built up. Art, history, and life itself are seen as obstacles to be eliminated. In their eyes, the only true form of existence is the void, and each act of destruction is a tribute to that void. They find a twisted sense of purpose in bringing everything to nothing, celebrating the chaos and emptiness they leave behind. 72. Boredom. Jaded by luxury or routine, the villain incites wars, rigs elections, or unleashes plagues to feel alive. The world has lost its luster, and they seek stimulation in the most destructive ways. They create chaos and conflict just to break the monotony. Lives are toys, and kingdoms are game boards. 73. Freedom. The villain hates order and desires absolute freedom. Their twisted sense of freedom means breaking every law, every moral, and defying every boundary. Their rebellion against order leads to a new form of tyranny. In the chaotic world they create, they become the only one capable of imposing order, one that is more oppressive than the one they destroyed. Their desire for absolute freedom results in a world where they are the only truly free person. 74. Recreational cruelty. Cruelty is a sport for this villain, and the pain of others is their entertainment. They get pleasure from the chaos and suffering they create. Their victim screams are music to their ears. The cold, unfeeling enjoyment they take in the destruction of others is terrifying. 75. Corrupt everyone. The villain drags others into corruption to numb their own shame. The only way to escape their own guilt is to pull everyone else down with them. They offer power to heroes, manipulate the virtuous, and enjoy watching even the strongest heroes fall. Their rationale is that by corrupting others, they can absolve themselves of their own sins. 76. Cruel artistic expression. The villain treats suffering as a form of art. They find beauty in the darkest, most twisted forms of cruelty, believing that true art lies in the raw, unfiltered depths of human suffering. Their works are grotesque and haunting, and their gallery is filled with the bodies of those they've harmed. 77. Rebellion. Once a revolutionary, the villain now resembles the tyrant that they overthrew. The villain, once inspired by ideas like freedom and peace, now cling to power with the same ruthlessness they wanted to destroy. They alter the truth, eliminate anyone who challenges them, and maintain control through fear. 78. Disillusionment. Once an idealist, the villain now mocks heroes and burns institutions that failed them. The villain now sees the world as irredeemably broken. They tear down symbols of authority, reject any attempt at reform, and spread chaos to prove that no system can be fixed. 79. Experimentation. The villain treats living beings as raw materials. The pursuit of knowledge justifies any cost. They see no value in ethical boundaries, only in the potential for power and control, and their progress is a stain on humanity. 80. Animal vengeance. The villain commands animals to punish humanity for deforestation, hunting, or pollution. They see themselves as nature's defender, unleashing beasts to exact revenge for humanity's crimes. Section 9. Manipulation and deception-based motives. These villains are either puppeteers or puppets. Some lie and gaslight to control others, while others are controlled by cults, curses, or corrupt systems. Their stories show how easily lies can turn even the most innocent people into tools of evil. They blur the lines between victim and villain, making us question who is truly in control. 81. Conspiracy. With charm and cunning, the villain draws in believers, promising a brighter future or a noble mission. Charisma masks the villain's manipulations as they recruit idealists into their secret cabal. Followers are pawns. Their hopes get twisted into blind fanaticism. The villain's endgame remains hidden, even from those who fight and bleed for their cause. 82. To serve a master. Every action the villain takes is justified by the will of a higher power. This could be a tyrant, a deity, or an ancient curse. The villain follows orders without question, but the more they obey, the more trapped they become, leaving them powerless to break free from their master's grasp. 83. False prophecy. The villain is driven by a false prophecy or vision, believing they are destined for greatness or divine purpose. They use it to rally followers and justify their actions, but the prophecy is a lie, crafted to control and exploit those who believe in it. Their followers, blinded by faith, become pawns in the villain's scheme. 84. Protecting secrets. The villain sees the truth as a dangerous weapon, one that could shatter their carefully constructed image. They will stop at nothing to protect their secrets, even if it means taking lives. Witnesses disappear, documents are altered, and allies are manipulated to maintain the illusion of innocence. But the burden of their lies grows heavier with each passing day, shredding their sanity bit by bit. 85. Mimicry. The villain mirrors their abuser or idol, adopting their mannerisms, tactics, and cruelties, pushing beyond what their mentor ever did. But no matter how closely they follow, their actions feel empty, a pale reflection of the original. They believe they are surpassing their role model, but in reality, they are a cheap imitation of the original. 86. Plagiarism. The villain steals ideas, identities, or achievements, murdering creators to claim their work. They forge documents, gaslight witnesses, and twist narratives until the truth suffocates them. Each stolen idea, each falsified document, each twisted narrative adds another layer to their illusion of genius. 87. Sharing guilt. The villain forces others to share their sins. Guilt is a burden they can't bear alone, so they push it onto others. They blackmail heroes into becoming accomplices, or they rig trials to pin their crimes on innocent victims. By spreading the blame, they hope to ease their own conscience, but guilt refuses to be transferred. It clings to them like a second skin. 88. Symbiotic power. The villain merges with a malevolent force, but as they grow stronger, they also lose pieces of themselves. They rationalize their actions by blaming the entity, saying it controls them, but the boundary between dominator and dominated fades. They are torn between their will and the entity's demands. 89. To fit in or gain acceptance. Exiled or ridiculed, the villain molds themselves into whatever a powerful group demands. They adapt to fit in, adopting beliefs and behaviors they fundamentally oppose, all in the hope of gaining approval. Belonging becomes a drug, one they'll overdose on to feel wanted. 90. The desire to better oneself. Born into poverty and oppression, the villain equates having power with dignity. They claw their way out of poverty, stepping on anyone who stands in their path. The power they gained comes at the cost of their integrity, and the higher they climb, the deeper they sink into resentment. Section 10. Control and perfection-based motives. These villains demand total control over nature, society, or humanity. They see imperfections as threats and must eliminate them. They kill undesirables, create dystopian societies, and hoard knowledge. Their stories warn us about the dangers of unchecked ambition. 91. Greed. Wealth, land, and power are trophies to hoard. The villain doesn't hoard these treasures out of necessity, but for the enjoyment of seeing others struggle to obtain them. Their greed is never satisfied. Each victory only amplifies their hunger, driving them to seek the next prize, no matter the cost. 92. Catastrophe. The villain exploits disasters like plagues, famines, or wars to position themselves as a savior. They view disasters as opportunities to rise from the chaos. While the world crumbles, they hoard resources, create restrictive laws, and silence anyone who dares to oppose them. 93. Control the next generation. The villain grooms children as soldiers, spies, or heirs, molding them into extensions of their will. They train these young minds to serve their purpose, turning them into obedient slaves who will carry out their every command. The future becomes a puppet show, its strings clenched tightly in their fist. Their vision of the world is one where power is passed down, not earned. 94. Perfection through isolation. The villain believes that true perfection can only be achieved in isolation. They create secluded, controlled environments where they can micromanage every aspect of their citizens' lives, ensuring that nothing disrupts their idea of a flawless world. They see the outside world as a source of contamination and refuse to allow anyone or anything to interfere with their utopia. 95. Perfectionism. Perfection is the ultimate goal, and anything that doesn't fit into the villain's narrow definition must be disposed of. They see diversity and complexity as flaws to be eliminated, not celebrated. Their vision of a flawless society is anything but perfect. It's a cold, suffocating world where individuality is crushed and freedom doesn't exist. 96. Purging ugliness. The villain values beauty above all else. Anything not seen as beautiful is deemed unacceptable. They only value outward beauty and fail to recognize inner beauty. They enforce strict regulations on how people should look and live. The world they create might be beautiful on the outside, but it is hollow and oppressive at its core. 97. Systemic oppression. The villain creates a social hierarchy, categorizing people into classes or roles to maintain control. They assign value based on arbitrary traits, race, class, ability, and use this system to justify inequality and exploitation. Order means everyone knows their place. Those at the top enjoy unchecked privilege, while those below are trapped in poverty and servitude. 98. Technological domination. The villain seeks to control the world through technology, using it to overpower and enslave humanity. They see people as weak and believe only their superior technology can fix society. Freedom is replaced with surveillance, creativity with automation, and individuality with conformity. 99. Scientific curiosity. The villain discards their humanity and views the world only through the lens of science. Driven by a desire to understand the universe, they don't hesitate to sacrifice human lives for scientific breakthroughs. Their methods are extremely unethical and ignore the value of life. 100. Paranoia. The villain trusts no one. Every ally is a potential traitor, and every whisper is a future plot against them. Their paranoia only deepens the isolation. The more they withdraw, the more they imagine threats, and the more they imagine threats, the more they lash out. In the end, their fear becomes self-fulfilling. The very treachery they anticipated is born from their own actions. Hopefully, this video has answered some questions for you. If it was helpful, please leave a like and comment below. Also, click the link in the description to join the Discord. Inside, you can get feedback on your comic or manga ideas, improve your art and writing, or find a partner to work with. Thanks for watching.